All right, Central Georgia, I'm coming to you now because we have two severe thunderstorm warnings over towards, we have actually now maybe looking like three. We have Telfair, Wilcox counties, they are both under a severe thunderstorm warning, and then Dodge County is still under a severe thunderstorm warning as well. Not only these two places, but we also have counties up here towards our north, Lamar and Upson counties, also Henry and Spalding. So I'll go ahead and take this full screen so that we can go ahead and get a closer look at what we're dealing with right now. And let me go ahead and pull up our National Weather Service chat also on my computer so that I can get the most recent updates as we are tracking these two storms. Okay, so starting with our storm up here to the north, looks like we have winds here that are close to 60 miles per hour over towards Upson and Lamar counties. This is set to expire at 7:30 tonight, so we'll watch that as it does track down here towards, looking like it's going to be the area of next highest impact is going to be over here towards Lamar County. That is where this storm is heading right now. Also looking like it's going to be entering Pike County in the next few minutes, but the area that is seeing the most intense impacts at the moment is over here in Spalding County. So this storm is tracking its way again down here towards Pike and Lamar counties, likely will be further down here in Upson County in the next couple of minutes. Let's see if we can see if there's any hail located within this storm. I know that's usually a reason that the National Weather Service does issue warnings like this, and it does look like there is a hail core over here in Spalding County that is about 4/10 of an inch in size. So that is one of the main threats that we're watching with this storm, but also severe thunderstorm warnings are with wind speeds up to 60 miles per hour. So that is likely the wind speeds that we are dealing with in this storm as well. So let's go ahead and zoom back out, check back in down here in our southern counties at these other two severe thunderstorm warnings down here in Dodge, Telfair and Wilcox counties, also seeing a severe thunderstorm warning as well. Again, likely wind speeds up to 60 miles per hour. I went ahead and flipped that lightning off just so that we can take a closer look at what we're dealing with here. And let me see, I'm just getting the latest from the National Weather Service about a few of these warnings. Okay, yes, does look like there was hail an inch in diameter within this storm. So let's go ahead and take a look, see if we're still seeing any more hail. And you can see these bright colors here, this bright yellow and this bright green, meaning we maybe are over an inch in hail size over here. Yes, looks like we've got an hail that's just shy of an inch and a half. So let's see if we can take that closer, see where that hail core is sitting over right now. Give me just 1 second to flip over to that. All right, again, yes, the hail core over here down just south of Telfair County. So let's see if we can flip back on our hail parameter and see where that hail is sitting over right now. Looks to be just north of Fitzgerald. It looks like our area of biggest hail is actually over the road right now down here south of Bowens Mill and west of China Hill. So if you are out on the roads over in this region, we are seeing hail that is about an inch in diameter, likely sizable enough to do some damage to your vehicle. I think this is about quarter-sized hail. So if you're out on the roads right now, that's an important threat to pay attention to. So we'll continue to watch that, see if any more hail does pop up. But again, there is the severe thunderstorm warning is warned also in Telfair County as well. So let's just go ahead and flip our lightning off so we can get a closer depiction of what's happening here. Looks like the area of highest impact here is just east of Milan, making its way towards the road. So again, with these storms, it's very important to note that they are packing a lot of rainfall into a very short amount of time. So what that means is that we could be seeing some flash flooding going on, especially if you're out towards the roads. That's very important to pay attention to because this is just going to be an important threat if you're driving. It's important to make sure you know that there could be lots of rainfall hitting the roads over the next couple of minutes. That is probably our biggest threat here with this storm down here in Telfair County. But again, all of these storms that we're seeing in central Georgia tonight have been very strong, and they continue to pop up throughout the rest of the evening. So we saw this line come through earlier this afternoon, and then we have started to see a few more showers pop up over here to our north and get warned, like this one that's making its way into Pike and Lamar counties, because they're still going to continue to be possible through the rest of the evening. You can kind of see a bigger picture here. We are not the only place that has severe thunderstorm warnings. Lots of severe weather up here in North Georgia as well. So these are going to continue to be possible through the rest of the evening. It's important to note that these could pop up through the rest of the afternoon. The models right now are showing that around the 1 a.m. mark is when we could start to see these really dissipate and not really have to worry about it anymore. But again, at least for the rest of the evening until then, it's important to pay attention to these. So let's go ahead, zoom back in here, see if we're getting any more signs of how these storms might be tracking and weakening. Again, we can check back in with our hail core. The good news is it does look like this hail is shrinking in diameter, the hail that's just to the north of Fitzgerald. Again, it does, earlier we were seeing hail over an inch in diameter. Now we're seeing about 7/10 of an inch in terms of the hail core here. Again, just to the north of Fitzgerald, just to the west of Jacksonville. That's where we're seeing that biggest hail core at the moment. Let's go ahead and take a look at where this storm is heading next and who's seeing the biggest impacts at the moment, so we can sort of outline that. Right now, it looks like, again, that hail core was down here just in Ben Hill County, just to the north of Fitzgerald, but looks like Jacksonville is the next area that will be seeing the highest impacts from these storms. Again, high winds and also likely some hail still tracking with this storm. Looks like Milan right now still seeing some pretty high impacts from this storm as well. This area where you're seeing the darkest red colors even creeping into the purple, that's where we're seeing the highest rainfall, and also where you're seeing the purple, that's likely where we could be seeing some hail as well. So it looks like Milan still sitting in that dark purple color. Over here in Cobbville, likely getting very heavy rainfall and even more in the next couple of minutes. Cedar Park clear right now, but the storm is tracking its way over towards Cedar Park, so important to pay attention when you start to see these clouds heading your way in Cedar Park. Again, McRae seeing some very heavy rainfall as well. And this is our warned storm, but this line that it's a part of is also still incredibly strong. So over here in Wheeler, Montgomery, Truitland counties, these counties are also still seeing some pretty intense impacts from these storms as well. You can see we still have some very dark reflectivity in this entire line, not just where it's warned here, still likely maybe even seeing some hail in these regions as well. Especially over here just south of, or just east of our viewing area, excuse me, still very strong high winds and again, very, very heavy rainfall. It's been a minute since we looked at our severe thunderstorm warning over here to our northern counties, so let's go ahead and check back in over here at Lamar. Parts of Monroe County starting to see this storm now make its way into the region. And again, this storm looking like it maybe doesn't really have as much hail as the one we're seeing down to the south. Let's check. It does have a little bit, looking much smaller in diameter though. If we go ahead and check how big it is, it's about 4/10 of an inch in size. So it's still important to pay attention because there is still hail in the area, but again, much smaller of a hail diameter than we're seeing in our southern storms. So let me zoom back in on that, excuse me, while our radar does load. Okay, again, looking right now like the biggest impacts are sitting over Lamar County, and then this storm is starting to creep its way into Pike County as well. Spalding starting to see the end of this storm. It's very isolated, so this will be a short-lived storm as it makes its way through Balding, but looking like Griffin, Rover, and even Hollandville, excuse me if I'm mispronouncing any of these names, Blatton's Mill, these areas are seeing the highest impact from this severe thunderstorm warning right now. Again, with that means that we are likely seeing winds up to 60 miles per hour. And again, we did just check in. We are seeing some hail that is shy of an inch in diameter as well in these regions. So I'm just checking in with the National Weather Service one more time just to make sure we haven't gotten any changes in these warnings. And doesn't look like we have seen any changes in the current warnings that we have right now, which should be a good thing. Hopefully that doesn't mean that they've extended it, especially this storm here to the north. They haven't seemed to extend it any further into any other county. So let's check back in down to our south and maybe we can track out this storm, see where it's heading next with our tracking tool. So give me just one moment to pull that up. And let me go ahead and pause this radar. All right, looking like our highest impact of storm is right here. So let's see if we can pull that out. Oh, give me just 1 second. My apologies. That is incorrect. All right, flipping off the lightning. All right, well, it's looking like this storm is Again, still making its way over here towards Telfair and Wheeler and Montgomery counties next. Does seem like it's actually a fairly quick moving storm, so it will be moving over these places fairly quickly. Mount Vernon, Alamo, McRae, starting to see the impacts from this storm. Vidalia as well. So the next places that we'll be seeing some impacts in the next few minutes, looking like we're looking at, I think I saw, yes, Toombs Central here, Lumber City, Jacksonville, starting to see some impacts from this storm. And we're also seeing a couple of cells pop up just south of where the storm actually is heading. So over here you can start to see Hazelhurst starting to get some lightning, even some cells popping up towards Baxley. So even though this cell hasn't made its way all the way over to these areas, some rain actually is already popping up in these regions. So just to zoom out to give you a bigger picture of what we're looking at, again, this is a very discrete line that has made its way all the way across central Georgia throughout the evening this evening. And actually, this is a part of the Storm Predictions Center level 1 out of 5 risk that we had earlier today. So I can go ahead and pull that up. You can see all counties in central Georgia were outlined for this risk, and the risks we were watching this afternoon are damaging winds, hail, and especially flash flooding, because these storms are very efficient rainfall producers. So that is one of the impacts that we were most concerned about when we were watching the potential for these to pop up this afternoon, just because they can pack so much rainfall as they come by, especially if they're slow moving, although these ones this afternoon seem to be moving fairly quickly. So hopefully they're getting across the regions that they are sitting over in an efficient amount of time. But again, zooming back in on this one down here to our south, even though these counties aren't warned, still seeing some pretty intense impacts in Montgomery, Wheeler, and Telfair is warned, so they also are seeing some pretty intense impacts from this storm. Again, very high winds over here in Mount Vernon, Alamo, McRae, Milan, and Jacksonville. They are receiving lots of lightning, high winds, maybe even some hail with this storm right now. In the next areas that we're watching this storm about to roll over here in Lumber City and Ovda, excuse me if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, Ovda, Toombs Central, and Reedsville looking to be the next cities that will be seeing some impacts. Again, Hazelhurst already getting another cell. You can actually see it populating on our radar here. But aside from that, this storm will be making its way into that region next over here in Jeff Davis County, Denton, Baxley, Glenville. Those are the regions I'm watching for the next areas of impact from this severe thunderstorm warning. Let's go ahead and check back and make sure that we aren't seeing any more hail with this storm, because we haven't checked on that in just a few minutes. Okay, the good news is, again, our hail diameter continues to shrink. Now still seeing hail 0.3 of an inch in diameter, as opposed to earlier we were seeing hail over an inch in diameter. So that is good that that hail core is continuing to shrink. And I'm actually just checking back in with the National Weather Service, and it does look like they've canceled the severe thunderstorm warning for Butts County. So let's go ahead back to our northern counties and check out what is going on with this warned storm up here. Give me just 1 second to flip back over to that. All right, so it does look like we have an update on this polygon here. It looks like they have maybe taken some regions out. Let me see if I can get the details from the National Hurricane Center here, or Weather Service, excuse me. All right, so this storm, again, making its way now, starting to leave Spalding County. I believe most areas in Spalding County starting to become in the clear. Looks like Griffin starting to see the clearing of this storm. The most intense impacts heading over here towards Williamson, making their way towards Zebulon in the next few minutes, making their way towards Concord in the next few minutes. Milner seeing some intense impacts, heavy rain, lots of lightning. Orchard Hill also sort of sitting in this gap where we have the storm in between that region. Barnesville likely seeing some impacts from this storm in the next few minutes. Meansville, and again, the Rock may be seeing some impacts as this storm makes its way further down to the south. So again, let's check on these counties that are warned here. It is still Spalding County, although as this storm makes its way through, doesn't really look like there's any other impacts falling behind it. So hopefully, as this storm tracks forward over the next few minutes, they'll be able to expire that warning for Spalding County. The next area of most intention that we're paying attention to here, Spike and Paulding counties, although Pike and Spalding counties. Spalding County already seeing some pretty intense impacts here. Milner and Barnesville looking like the areas that are likely seeing some of the most of the impacts from this storm. But again, over here in Pike County, Zebulon about to see the brunt of this storm. Concord and Meansville, it'll be on the way to you in the next couple of minutes. So we'll continue to watch that storm as well, but just checking back in down here to our southern storm to make sure there's really been no changes. Let me check the National Weather Service chat just one more time. I'm going to walk over here and pull it up on my computer. Just give me just 1 second to do that as we watch these storms. All right. Okay. Does look like we are still just seeing the same counties warned for this region. Again, this is set to expire at 7:30. Right now it's 7:08. So we're still a few minutes away from the expiration time, but the fact that they haven't extended this into any of the regions here where we're still seeing very intense impacts. Let me actually pull up my arrows so I can show you what I'm talking about here. Give me just 1 second to do that. Okay. All right. So it's actually good news that they haven't extended this warning, as I was saying, to these counties over here, Wheeler, Montgomery, and Trutland, that have still some pretty intense impacts. It's very encouraging that the National Weather Service hasn't extended this warning into these regions as well. Again, doesn't mean that they're not receiving some pretty intense impacts. We saw earlier that they still have winds of likely up to 50 miles per hour, but for something to be issued as a severe thunderstorm warning, it has to be closer to 60 miles per hour. So likely still seeing some pretty intense impacts, but staying just shy of that severe warning. So again, that's lots of lightning rolling into the area right now. So let's start talking about what areas are seeing impacts. Again, our strongest impacts, let me outline those for you one more time. Vidalia right here seeing some intense impacts. Mount Vernon, heavy rain over here in Alamo towards McRae. Milan starting to be in the clear. Again, that storm is making its way forward past Milan just to the east. Jacksonville seeing some pretty intense impacts here. Heavy rain, strong winds. The areas that I'm watching next for this storm to make its way over to is Tomb Central. Again, Uvalda over here, Lumber City, Hazelhurst. Again, I apologize for my mispronunciation of this name here. Lumber City seeing some impacts here soon. Again, Hazelhurst seeing the impacts from this cell that just popped up, and then this larger cell that's making its way towards them. That will be the areas of impacts in the next few minutes. Over here, even towards Reedsville, Collins starting to see some rain over here. Cobbtown seeing some pretty intense heavy rain as well. So let's actually check, because we haven't seen any more hail cores popping up. So let's see. All right, so we do have some more hail cores over here just south of Hazelhurst and north of Denton. This is where we saw that cell pop up that is not actually a part of the storm that we're watching, the warned one. This hail diameter is about 0.6 of an inch, and over here to the north of Baxley, maybe even seeing some larger hail, about 0.9 of an inch, so just shy of an inch in diameter. So again, out on the roads, this is going to be important to pay attention to, especially because it's heavy rainfall, not only just hail. We're seeing some pretty intense rainfall over towards the roads in this region, so that likely could cause some concern for some flash flooding if you're out driving. You can see that area of purple here. This is where we just tracked that hail core. When you can see that area of purple, that usually means that it's picking up on the reflectivity of some hail falling. So it does look like that area just north of Baxley is where we're seeing the largest hail. But again, let's go big picture here and take a bigger look at all we're looking at. It does look like a new severe thunderstorm warning has been issued just to the east of our counties here, Macon and Taylor County, just to the east of you. Let me check on the National Weather Service and see what they've said about that one. All right, it does look like at 7:05, I did get an update from the National Weather Service about our storm over here towards Pike, Spalding, Lamar, and Upson counties. It does look like they did continue to watch this. They haven't really canceled it for Spalding County, even though it continues to move through. So this one is a bit of a slower moving storm. Again, still seeing impacts over here in Barnesville. Milner seeing lots of lightning and some heavy rainfall. Zebulon getting some heavy rainfall now. Hollandville about to have some heavy rain. Rover, the only area that it's really started to make its way out of is over here towards Rio, Brooks, Griffin, and Walker Mill. They are starting to see this storm move further south. Not really any impacts in that region anymore. But again, these regions, this is still being a watch storm. They haven't really had any reason to cancel this warning yet, which means that they're still probably seeing some very high winds. Well, let me go ahead and pause this just so we can get a better picture of where it's sitting over right now. And I'll flip off this lightning so that we can see some of these town names. Again, Milner seeing some very heavy rain over towards the roads here. Barnesville about to have some very heavy rain as well. Goggins, Collier, all sitting under some intense rain. Even over here towards Forsyth, even though only these parts of Monroe County are warned, we are still seeing some rain over here towards Forsyth as well. So over here towards Zebulon, also getting some intense rainfall. Rover, Hollandville, still seeing some intense rain as well. And we can check on our hail parameter. We haven't checked back in on the hail in this storm either in a while. Looks like we only have one area that's really picking up on some hail just to the south of Chapel and to the east of Milner. And that is pretty small hail. It's only about 0.2 of an inch in diameter. So that's actually good news. We're not really seeing a whole lot of hail with this storm. So hopefully over the next few minutes, as it continues to track its way south, the biggest impacts remain just the amount of rainfall it's packing into its region. Again, we are still seeing some winds that are pretty gusty and pretty strong, but it's always encouraging when we don't really see a lot of hail, because hopefully that means that this storm is starting to dissipate as it moves its way south. So that's really what I would pay attention to if you're in these regions, is likely the amount of rainfall, just because this is a slower moving storm than the one we're seeing towards the south. So it likely could, again, still cause some concerns for flash flooding as well. So again, just taking you out for a bigger picture at what we're looking at here. This line made its way down central Georgia throughout the evening and afternoon. We've had several severe thunderstorm warnings issued with it. This is the line I'm talking about down here, and its highest impacts. We still have severe thunderstorm warnings over here in Telfair and Dodge County. So let me just go ahead and make sure we haven't had any more updates from the National Weather Service as well here in the chat. Give me just a second to look at that. Does not look like we have seen any here. I'm just making sure that we don't have any signs of rotation in any of these storms either. So let me just go ahead and make sure that we are still looking in the clear for that. Okay, so no signs of rotation in any of these storms right now, which is good news, because that means that we're really just continuing to look at the same threats that we've been watching, which again is flash flooding, likely seeing some hail, and then also a whole lot of lightning with this storm as well. I'm going to check in on this region over here just to the north of Reedsville, just because this bright purple reflectivity is catching my eye. So I'm going to see if they are getting any hail. Doesn't look like it, but that is an area to pay attention to over here towards Collins. That bright purple reflectivity usually is an indication that they could be getting some hail or just some really, really intense rainfall. So that did kind of grab my attention there over here in Collins, heading towards Claxton, just to the north of Reedsville. Likely a really high amount of rainfall over here, maybe even seeing some hail in the next few minutes. So let's again check and see where this storm is tracking next. Looks like it is creeping closer towards Lumber City, making its way into Toombs Central now. Again, Hazelhurst will be a target in the next couple of minutes. Over here in Denton, starting to see some rain. Baxley, this storm is on the way to you as well. And let's see if we have any hail in any of these regions either. Okay, again, still some hail cores in that area that we were watching just a few minutes ago. And let me just, okay, I just got an update about this area, and let me pull that up so I can give some more updated information about this storm. Give me just 1 second to do that. Okay, so this area that does have that intense hail that we were watching earlier, the biggest hail core just to the north of Baxley, to the east of Hazelhurst. The National Weather Service is watching this area just because of the amount of hail that it has stirred up. But again, we watched this pop up from the beginning. You can see this cell populate here towards Hazelhurst, and this actually isn't even a part of the line we're watching. So that's kind of my point with all of these storms this afternoon. Even though this initial line is kind of making its way out of central Georgia, these kind of cells that pop up and still can be locally very strong are going to continue to be possible throughout the rest of the evening and into the early hours of tonight. So we are kind of still watching these potential storms popping up throughout until about the 1 a.m. hour is what I'm seeing from models at the moment. But again, that is kind of exactly what I'm talking about. It's not even a part of the line that we're watching, and it's just popped up and has become very strong very quickly. So that is the potential for the rest of the day. But again, let's check back in. I'm going to flip the lightning off one more time just so you can get a better idea of how this storm might be changing. Looks like our areas of highest impact over here just to the east of Jacksonville. And again, this storm is making its way towards Lumber City, Hazelhurst, and it is entering this area over here in Toombs Central, Alston, Mount Vernon, all seeing some impacts over here just in Toombs County and Montgomery counties. Wheeler as well. So even though these are the warned counties over here in Dodge and Telfair, still seeing some pretty high impacts from this general line in all these counties over here. So in Wilcox and Telfair counties, still the reason that they are warned is because they're seeing some higher wind speeds than these other regions over here. So winds in the polygons are up to 60 miles per hour, whereas our winds outside of the polygons are likely just shy of that, closer to about 50 miles per hour in those regions. So again, I'll put that back in motion here, and we will check back up at our storm in the north here just to see if we've got any changes in this one as well. And let me flip the lightning back on just so we can see how this one might be shifting as well. Again, this one looking like it's maybe a little bit less intense than the line we're seeing down to the south. Let's check in and see if we have any hail from this storm as well. Yes, so this has been the story for most of the time. Not as big hail cores within this storm up over here towards Monroe County. Again, still seeing hail about 0.3 of an inch in diameter, which is much smaller than the hail that we're seeing in the storm down to the south, but it does seem to be doing the same thing that our other storm is doing as well, which is starting to stir up some other cells just towards the south of it. So some cells are beginning to stir up over here towards Bolingbroke. Lizella making their way actually probably towards the station in the next few minutes. You may begin to hear some rumbles of thunder over me while I am on the live stream. But yes, again, this is continuing to stir up some cells over here. Again, Forsyth starting to see some cells begin to stir up. Dias, Mosella, Sandy Point, Roberta, these areas all beginning to see some storms popping up due to this line pushing through. You can kind of see the outflow boundary that it's pushing, so likely it's pushing some force towards these regions that are pretty moist already, which is allowing these cells to begin to stir up. I do want to check on this storm over here just to make sure it's not making its way towards Macon and Taylor counties, but it doesn't look like it. Looks like it's actually pushing further south. So that's good news over here towards Macon and Taylor counties, not seeing the impacts from this severe thunderstorm warning here. And let me go ahead and just keep checking in with the National Weather Service chat just to make sure we don't have any more updates. I'll go ahead and take this full view while I do that. Doesn't seem like we've received any further guidance about any of these storms at the moment, which is actually encouraging news. If they're not extending these polygons or issuing other warnings, usually that means that they are going to let them expire at the time that they're set to. So again, let's just check back in down here towards our south, because I am once again starting to see some areas of purple here, which means we could be seeing some hail in these regions again. Still seeing the hail cores in the same spot. Again, these aren't warned. This is the cell that we watched pop up just to the north of Baxley, to the east of Hazelhurst, and just to the north of Denton as well. Starting to see hail core diameters, again, likely shy of an inch. Let's go ahead and check. About half an inch in diameter, but still seeing some hail with these cells that aren't warned. So that is important to pay attention to as we're still watching this line make its way through here. Again, this is part of a bigger system that we've been watching for the entire day. I can go ahead and once again show you our SPC outlook for this afternoon. We were in a level 1 out of 5 risk for all counties here in central Georgia, and the biggest threats with that is exactly what we're seeing right now. The chance to basically see some severe thunderstorm warnings, which is damaging winds, hail, and especially flash flooding. Now, I want to remind you that this actually continues into tomorrow as well. Not all counties are outlined in this risk, but the way that today looked, I still would be on guard even in our counties that are not outlined in the risk, just because we still see the potential for these storms to pop up really anywhere. It's kind of hard to really say that these counties aren't going to see impacts from these storms, but tomorrow will be a very, very similar story to how today was. And I actually will go ahead and check on our models and see how this is looking for the rest of the evening here. Again, this model not really doing the best job of showing how these could still pop up through the evening, but I do expect you can kind of see these areas here where we're starting to see some orange and yellow throughout the rest of the night, still around 11 p.m. tonight. So I'd expect that we still could see some impacts. Again, I'm saying until about 1 a.m. That's when hopefully these are just becoming more like showers in the overnight hours and don't carry as much severe potential. But again, through tomorrow, still seeing the chance to see lots of storms very similar to how we did today. You can kind of see another pattern where it's similar to the line that we saw today. So that is important to pay attention to for tomorrow, and that's kind of the bigger picture of what's going on here in central Georgia this afternoon and this evening, just for some perspective, just because I know sometimes it can be confusing, like why these storms have just popped up this evening, but that's sort of the bigger picture of what we're looking at. So again, zeroing back in on the storms where we do have severe thunderstorm warnings and still looking at some impacts. That is still over here. Hazelhurst is kind of in this halo of clear space. I've been waiting for them to have some impacts over the past couple of minutes because they're really the area I'm watching to receive something the most next, but does seem to be in this halo in between the two cells that we're watching here. So still watching for impacts over here in Hazelhurst. Looks like they'll see some in the next few minutes. The storm is making its way out of, let me flip this off so I can read these names, out of Chauncey, Milan, Abbeville, and Rochelle. They did see some impacts earlier, but now starting to just see some rain. The impacts from the storm making its way out of these regions, but still very intense over here in Jacksonville. Again, Lumber City, McRae maybe starting to see their way into the clear. You can see that red color starting to make its way out of McRae, which means they're starting to just see some rain. Alamo also just starting to see some rain. Mount Vernon will be entering the clear here in just a few minutes. Vidalia starting to enter the clear. Where you see this green, that's where we're starting to see this line move out of the way. And luckily, there's not really anything lingering behind it. So after you see your city name leave this intense dark red and dark purple area, that's when you kind of can consider yourself in the clear aside from a few showers lingering behind this storm. So that is good news for those areas here. But again, over here towards Collins, maybe even seeing some hail here in Collins, Reedsville, Toombs Central, Claxton about to see some impacts, Glenville about to see some impacts as well. And Hazelhurst, there we go, Hazelhurst starting to see some rain as this storm kind of fills itself in here. Baxley still seeing some impacts as well. And let me just zoom out while I check the National Weather Service chat because I am getting a notification. Okay, it doesn't look like it's for this storm here. But again, still checking back in because our storm over here towards our northern counties does look like it's kind of progressed its way over further into Monroe County than is actually warned. So we are starting to see some impacts here in Forsyth and Bolingbroke. And these areas are not within the polygon, but likely still seeing some intense impacts from this storm as well. And I'm trying to catch where that area of purple seems to be popping up just to the east of Barnesville. Let's just do a quick check and make sure that there's no more hail. Okay, again, we've continued to see very small hail diameters within this storm, which is a good thing. Hopefully we don't really see any more larger areas of hail within this storm. But that seems to be the main concern right now, seems to be how this storm might be tightening up a little bit in terms of it's just likely has some very strong winds with it still. And again, very intense amount of rainfall, even over here towards I-75, just to the north of Forsyth. We're starting to see some very heavy rainfall in the next few minutes. So if you're out on the highway, it's going to be important to pay attention to this. Remember, it's actually against the law to put your flashers on in storms because it can mess with your depth perception. So it's best actually if you're out on the road, maybe to just pull over to a safe place or get off on the exit, especially if you're out on the highway, because that is really where the risk of flash flooding is the highest. So that's what I'm looking at over here towards in between High Falls and Forsyth. They are definitely about to start seeing some heavy rainfall on I-75. Again, Barnesville seeing some intense impacts. Milner looking like they're making their way into the clear. Actually, most of Spalding County seems to have seen this storm move on, so I wouldn't be surprised if they canceled the warning for Spalding County in the next couple of minutes. That's usually the next course of action from the National Weather Service. But again, still seeing impacts over here in Zebulon, Meansville, now seeing the most intense parts of the storm. Meansville and Barnesville, they are sitting under the heaviest rainfall and likely seeing a lot of lightning. These storms are likely lighting up the night sky quite a bit here. Again, still watching how it pops up these cells over here towards Lizella and Macon. These are going to continue to really give us the chance to see these cells pop up through the rest of the evening. Kind of going big picture, you can see a few of them stirred up by these other storms here. Even this one to our west here kind of created a few cells over here in Marshallville and even towards Butler a little bit. So still watching for the chance for these storms to pop up. Honestly, it's just best to play it safe tonight, you know, wait all of these out indoors because these are kind of popping up at random. It's almost like trying to guess where boiling water is going to pop up. That's kind of the pattern here with our afternoon cells. So some cells definitely making their way into Macon. Again, I'm trying to hear if I can hear any thunder over the station right now. Haven't heard any just yet, but it is likely that we'll hear some in a few minutes. So let me zero back in on our storms to the south here. Again, lots of lightning. These storms are very, very, very bright And we will check in on our hail one more time because we were still seeing some very large hail just to the north of Baxley, but it looks like all of our hail cores beginning to shrink in size. You're starting to see that brown as opposed to maybe that green and even that blue range. So when we start to see brown, that's good. That means that we are starting to find hail that's just is below an inch level as opposed to the hail we were seeing that was over an inch earlier today. So that is good. Not seeing as large hail cores with this storm down here to the south anymore. And let me just check with the National Weather Service one more time. All right, so we are getting a flood warning, which is actually exactly what I was just talking about. Over here in Spalding, Georgia, actually that's actually to the north of us, so excuse me, my mistake. We aren't really getting any flood warnings for us here. I misread Spalding County as Spalding, Georgia, so that's actually not for us. But again, that is still one of the impacts with our storms here. We are seeing very high rainfall with these storms as they roll across the area, especially out on the roads. That's going to be the main impact, especially over here in this one towards our southern counties as it kind of just sits over Telfair and Wheeler and makes its way into Jeff Davis and Coffee counties. That is really pushing a lot of rain over these regions, and it just kind of continues to sit. It's really stayed in this region as basically the entire time that we've been on the air here. All right, they have expired the severe thunderstorm warning for Dodge and Telfair County, so let's see if that does pop off of our screen here. That's actually the one that this arrow is pointing at right now. Which means that the National Weather Service does not consider this to be severe anymore. They also look like they're expiring the one for Telfair and Wilcox County. So exactly the storm we're zeroed in on right now where we still have 2 polygons. That is what the National Weather Service is letting expire at this time, which is great news. That means there's winds are no longer qualified for severe range, and also we're likely seeing hail small enough to where it's not really considered a severe thunderstorm warning anymore. So waiting for those polygons to pop off of our radar here, but that's great news that these storms hopefully are dying down in those regions. But again, still seeing some pretty intense rainfall over here towards especially Jeff Davis County, where you can see these darker colors in the reflectivity here. Lots of rainfall in those regions, especially over Denton here. That's where we're starting to see a whole lot of rain. And these storms continue to just track south, hopefully leaving our viewing area here in just a few minutes. Vidalia, Mount Vernon, Alamo, McRae, Milan, all sitting in the clear now. Nothing sitting behind this storm that's about to come. So after you start to see the rain clear out, especially in these regions, that does mean you are in the clear because this is just a quick line. There's nothing really sitting behind it. But again, our area is still not really in the clear just yet. Toombs Central, Lumber City, Hazelhurst, Denton, Baxley, that is where the storm is sitting the strongest right now, even still over here in Jacksonville. That's where we're still seeing lots of impacts from the storm. But again, the National Weather Service has let those 2 warnings expire, which is great, and even let the warning expire over here towards our northern counties in Monroe and Lamar and Pike counties. The warning has expired for these regions as well. So that is great news. No more severe thunderstorm warnings for us here in central Georgia at the moment. But again, these storms could continue to pop up through the rest of the afternoon. So we definitely still want to pay attention to that because we could still see storms until the rest of the evening. Again, I'm watching models right now. You saw that I showed them earlier. That really showed that we could see things start to wind down by around 1 a.m. But again, these cells can continue to pop up through the rest of the evening. So we'll be back on the air at 10 and 11 on 13 WMAZ. And again, if any more severe thunderstorm warnings are issued, we will be back online. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll continue to track these storms with you for the rest of the night.